Here's a number that should stop you cold. Walmart's annual revenue rivals the entire economic output of many countries combined. Not a city, not a state, entire countries. And it built that empire mostly by doing something almost every competitor assumed was impossible to sustain, selling things cheaper than seemed reasonable, year after year for decades, without ever running out of money to do it. Most people assume Walmart got big by simply undercutting everyone on price. That explanation isn't wrong, but it's dangerously incomplete. Cutting prices is easy. Any struggling retailer can slash prices for a season and watch the losses pile up right behind the sales. What Walmart figured out was something much harder and much less visible, a way to cut prices permanently without cutting itself out of business in the process. But that's only part of the story, because to understand how Walmart actually became the largest retailer on earth, we first need to understand a single word that shows up constantly in the company's own internal culture. A word that sounds almost too simple to explain an empire this size. That word is efficiency, and Walmart didn't just practice it. It built its entire company architecture around squeezing out inefficiency at every possible link in the chain, long before most competitors even understood that the chain itself was the real battlefield. Start with the stores themselves. Early Walmart locations deliberately opened in small towns that larger retailers considered too insignificant to bother with, towns without the population density that traditional retail wisdom said you needed to support a large store. Competitors saw a town too small to matter. Walmart saw a town with no real competition at all, where a single large store could capture nearly the entire local market without ever having to fight another major retailer directly for it. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This wasn't just a clever land grab. It solved a much deeper logistical puzzle. By clustering stores tightly around distribution centers, often opening several new locations within driving distance of a single warehouse before moving on to the next region, Walmart built one of the most efficient delivery networks in retail history almost by accident, simply by refusing to expand the way everyone else expanded. Wait, if small towns and clustered stores explain the early growth, how does that turn into becoming one of the largest companies on the planet decades later? It helps to rewind to the very beginning of this strategy, because the founding logic behind it was almost the opposite of how most large retailers thought at the time. When the first Walmart opened in a small Arkansas town in the early 1960s, the prevailing wisdom in retail said large discount stores belonged in cities, where population density guaranteed enough customers walking through the door. The founder had spent years running smaller variety stores in rural areas, and had noticed something the big city chains had missed entirely. Rural shoppers wanted the exact same low prices and wide selection city shoppers got, and almost nobody was offering it to them. Rather than fighting for space in crowded urban markets already full of competitors, the strategy was to go where there was effectively no competition at all, a town too small for a major chain to bother with, but large enough to support one well-run store if that store became the obvious, unavoidable choice for everyone nearby. Here's the twist most people never consider. That efficient distribution network became the foundation for something far more powerful: leverage over suppliers on a scale almost no other retailer could match. Because Walmart could guarantee massive, predictable purchasing volume across thousands of locations, it could negotiate prices with manufacturers that smaller retailers simply couldn't access. A supplier producing detergent, toys, or clothing would often rather sell an enormous volume to Walmart at a thin margin than sell a smaller volume to a regional chain at a slightly better one, because the total revenue and manufacturing efficiency gained from a Walmart-sized order frequently outweighed the difference. This dynamic gave Walmart something retailers rarely get to keep for long: a cost advantage that competitors genuinely could not replicate just by trying harder or cutting their own margins. This is where things get even more interesting, because Walmart didn't stop at negotiating better prices. It fundamentally restructured how those negotiations happened in the first place. Traditional retail for most of the 20th century ran through a layer of distributors and wholesalers sitting between manufacturers and stores, each one taking a cut along the way. Walmart pushed hard to cut that layer out entirely wherever possible, building direct relationships with manufacturers and demanding data-sharing arrangements that let both sides see real-time sales information. If a particular product was selling faster than expected in Texas but slower in Ohio, that information could flow back to the manufacturer almost immediately, adjusting production and shipment before a single dollar was wasted on unsold inventory sitting in a warehouse. Nobody expected this next part. This constant information exchange effectively turned Walmart's own checkout registers into a real-time forecasting tool for its entire supply chain, one of the earliest and most aggressive uses of data to run a physical retail operation at massive scale. Decades before most companies treated data itself as a competitive advantage worth investing in. But here's the crazy part. None of this efficiency would have mattered if Walmart hadn't paired it with a pricing philosophy that most publicly traded companies find almost impossible to stick with over the long run. It's called everyday low pricing, and the idea sounds deceptively simple. Instead of running frequent sales and promotions the way most retailers do, cycling prices up and down to create the feeling of a deal, Walmart committed to keeping prices consistently low all the time. This sounds like it should generate less excitement, fewer reasons for a shopper to rush in during a big sale weekend. In practice, it built something more valuable than excitement: trust. Shoppers stopped needing to time their purchases around sales events, because the price today was close to the price it would be next month anyway. This is where things went wrong for a lot of competitors who tried to fight Walmart purely on advertised discounts. A store built around big, splashy sale events depends on shoppers noticing and reacting to those events. A store built around consistently low prices doesn't need that reaction at all. It just needs to keep being the obvious low-effort default choice, week after week, without requiring the shopper to think about timing their purchase at all. Everything changed once this pricing philosophy combined with the efficiency built into the supply chain. Because low prices without efficient operations would have bankrupted almost any other company attempting it. Walmart's margins on individual items are famously thin, often thinner than what many competitors consider sustainable. What makes the model work isn't the margin on any single sale, it's volume, an almost unimaginable amount of it, spread across tens of thousands of stores worldwide, where even a razor-thin profit per item adds up to enormous total profit once multiplied across billions of transactions a year. Let's walk through what this actually looks like with real numbers, because the abstract version of this story is easy to nod along to, but the specific version is where it really clicks. Imagine a single supercenter selling roughly 100,000 different products, with an average margin across the entire store sitting somewhere in the low double digits, a level many traditional retailers would consider uncomfortably thin. If that single store generates even a modest amount of daily foot traffic, the total transaction volume across a full year can run into the tens of millions of dollars for just that one location. Multiply that structure across more than 10,000 stores operating globally, and the total revenue scale becomes almost difficult to comprehend, rivaling the GDP of entire mid-sized nations, built almost entirely on a strategy of making very little on each individual sale and making up for it with sheer, relentless volume. There's one more piece of this puzzle that rarely gets enough credit, and it involves something most shoppers never think about while walking through the aisles: real estate and logistics infrastructure that took decades to build and would be almost impossible for a new competitor to replicate quickly. Walmart owns or controls a private trucking fleet and distribution network so extensive that it functions almost like its own internal logistics company, separate from the retail brand shoppers actually see. This infrastructure isn't just a cost center supporting the stores. It's a competitive moat, because a new competitor trying to challenge Walmart on price would also need to build an equally efficient distribution system from scratch, a project that would take years and enormous capital before a single competitive price could even be offered at scale. There's one more battle in this story worth understanding, and it's the one that nearly caught the entire company off guard decades after it had already dominated physical retail: the rise of online shopping. For years, a supply chain built entirely around massive physical stores looked like exactly the wrong kind of infrastructure for a world shifting toward ordering from a phone and having a package show up at the door instead. A competitor built from scratch around online logistics started capturing exactly the kind of price-sensitive, convenience-driven shoppers that had once been Walmart's core customer base, and for a period it genuinely looked like the physical retail giant might be caught permanently flat-footed by a threat that didn't look anything like a traditional competitor. What happened next reveals something important about how deeply the efficiency-first culture had been built into the company. Rather than trying to outbuild an online-only competitor's warehouse network from zero, Walmart leaned into the one advantage a purely online retailer could never fully replicate: an enormous existing footprint of physical stores sitting close to nearly every major population center in the country. Those stores became something new: local fulfillment hubs, letting online orders ship from the nearest store rather than a distant warehouse, and letting customers pick up online orders in person without waiting for delivery at all. It wasn't a perfect solution, and the online rival still maintains real advantages in certain categories, but it turned what looked like Walmart's biggest liability: thousands of physical buildings built for an earlier era of shopping into a genuine competitive weapon nobody purely online could match overnight. This is where the story shifts into something Walmart had to fight much harder to solve. How do you keep this entire machine running efficiently once it becomes too large for any single person to manage by instinct alone? The answer involved building one of the most sophisticated inventory tracking and forecasting systems in retail history, one that could tell store managers almost exactly how much of a given product to stock based on seasonal patterns, regional preferences, and even short-term weather forecasts that might spike demand for particular items in a particular region within days. A hurricane approaching a coastal area, for instance, has historically triggered predictable spikes in demand for very specific items, and Walmart's forecasting systems have been documented adjusting shipments to exactly those regions in anticipation, sometimes stocking unexpected products, driven purely by historical sales pattern data rather than any human manager's guess. This kind of forecasting sounds almost mundane described in the abstract, a computer predicting what people will buy before they buy it. In practice, at the scale Walmart operates, it represents one of the earliest large-scale examples of a retailer treating raw sales data as seriously as a manufacturer treats raw materials, something to be refined, analyzed, and turned into a genuine competitive advantage rather than simply archived after each quarter's numbers were reported. Competitors eventually built similar systems of their own, but by the time most of them caught up, Walmart had already spent years refining the process at a scale and level of detail few rivals could match. Another example of an advantage compounding quietly in the background, long before most shoppers, or even most competitors, fully understood it was happening. None of this makes Walmart's model easy to criticize or easy to defend in simple terms. The same relentless efficiency that delivers low prices to shoppers has also drawn sustained criticism over the decades regarding wages, working conditions, and the effect a single large store can have on smaller local businesses in the towns it enters. Unable to compete with prices built on a scale of purchasing power no small business could ever access. These aren't side issues to the business model. They're a direct consequence of the exact same efficiency that makes the low prices possible in the first place, which is part of why the debate around Walmart's impact on local economies has remained genuinely contested for decades rather than settled in either direction. Economists studying this effect have found both sides of the argument hold real weight, which is part of why the debate has never fully resolved. Lower prices genuinely stretch household budgets further, a meaningful benefit for lower-income shoppers who make up a large share of Walmart's customer base. At the same time, studies looking at towns before and after a large store's arrival have documented real declines in small retail employment nearby, as locally owned shops built without access to the same purchasing scale struggled to compete on price for goods that overlap with Walmart's inventory. Either effect cancels the other out. Both are simultaneously true, and which one weighs heavier tends to depend heavily on the specific town, the specific era, and which side of the price tag someone happens to be standing on. So here is the reveal that ties every piece of this story together. Walmart didn't become the world's largest retailer by simply being cheaper. It became the largest retailer by rebuilding the entire mechanics of how a retail supply chain operates, from where stores are placed, to how suppliers are negotiated with, to how real-time sales data flows back into production decisions, to a pricing philosophy built around consistency rather than manufactured excitement. Low prices were never the whole strategy. They were the visible result of a much larger, much less visible machine engineered for efficiency at every single link in the chain, running at a scale few competitors could ever hope to match. So the next time you walk down an aisle stocked with almost every category of product imaginable, prices that rarely seem to move, you'll understand what's actually happening behind that consistency. It isn't an accident, and it isn't simple generosity toward the shopper either. It's the visible output of one of the most efficient, most carefully engineered supply chains ever built, decades in the making, running quietly behind every single price tag on every single shelf. If this changed how you see your next trip down the aisle, subscribe. New videos breaking down the hidden economics behind the businesses that quietly run the world around you, every single week. So the next time you walk down an aisle stocked with almost every category of product imaginable, prices that rarely seem to move, you'll understand what's actually happening behind that consistency. It isn't an accident, and it isn't simple generosity toward the shopper either. It's the visible output of one of the most efficient, most carefully engineered supply chains ever built, decades in the making, running quietly behind every single price tag on every single shelf. If this changed how you see your next trip down the aisle, subscribe. New videos breaking down the hidden economics behind the businesses that quietly run the world around you, every single week.